Greetings YouTubers, welcome to my channel. Today we are going to be dropping this transmission out of this 2006 Chevy Trailblazer. Now this process should be the same from 2002 all the way to about 2008, and I believe in 2009 they did change things around a little bit, so you'll have to do your own research. Now this Trailblazer only has 109,000 miles on it. Problems began around 90,000 miles. I bought it off of the second person, and now it is my problem, and I want to show you how to go ahead and drop a transmission out. Maybe you're having an issue with yours, you would just like to go ahead and swap it out and save yourself maybe a couple $1,000s. Well, this will be a great opportunity. Or if you just want to pull it out and rebuild it or change the torque converter, hopefully this video will help you out. Now you can see as we start this video, I do have the front wheels up on a set of ramps about 8 inches. And we have the emergency brake set, and I have the back wheels blocked. And doing all that, it gives me about 13 inches of clearance from the bottom of the frame. Of course, later, if I need the vehicle to go up higher once I get the transmission down, I need to slide it out because sometimes the transmissions like to hit against these frames. I can put a jack under the front and maybe lift it up just a little bit, but you can play around with your height dimensions a little bit later. Now, the transmission jack I will be using is something that I picked up on Facebook Marketplace. I picked this up for about $60. Had to do a little bit of modifying, had a bearing missing on the bottom. Of course, the strap, well, that's a different story. Eventually, we're going to bolt a little piece of wood on here to make this just a little bit bigger so the transmission will have something kind of nice to steady on. And the height of this transmission jack goes up to about 24 inches, so I should have plenty of height to get underneath that transmission. And of course, when you put this transmission jack all the way down, you see it goes down fairly low. It does go down to about 8 inches, so I'll have to be careful just how low I can get this. If I can get the transmission out without hitting the frame, that'll be great, but nevertheless, like I said, I may have to jack the front end up a little bit. These are things that you get into down the road, and usually you can work them out on your own. Now, there are a few things I've gone ahead and done just to speed up the video a little bit. On the back of the transfer case, I've taken this plug out here. Yours might be different. It could have a Allen socket, or it could just have a plug, just a regular ratchet, a 3/8 plug. I've taken that out and gone ahead and drained out the fluid just so when I take the transfer case off and the rear drive shaft, it doesn't leak all over the place. And also, there is the transmission pan. I've gone ahead and taken out the 14 millimeter transmission bolt, and I did this early so all the transmission fluid, or most of it, will drip out of the transmission case into the bucket there. So at this point it looks like we're ready to go ahead and put this transmission pan on just for convenience for now. We'll just simply put the pan back on without the gasket and bolt it back on so the transmission fluid that's still dripping will not drip down on us. And there is a look at the transfer case. 1.5 quarts of fluid, pretty black, and also the filter and gasket. At this point you do not have to put the filter back in, just leave it out for now. So at this point we're ready to go ahead and start disconnecting some things underneath, finally fixing your transmission hopefully. And now we have our transmission pan back on. We have 5 or 6 bolts in. That's all we need to put back in it at this point, and we'll put the remainder of the bolts into a pail. Alright, so the first thing we want to do is go ahead and get our cross member out. There are some bolts here. They should be fairly easy to get. We have 2 on the bottom of the transmission mount, and also we have, looks like about 5 on each side here. Once we get these down, this will allow us to lower the transmission and also the back of the rear end here, where we can actually get into the transmission rear drive shaft. We can disconnect that, eventually get the transfer case out. But first we got to go ahead and get these bolts out, and we got to go ahead and support the back of the transfer case. And we'll do that by using one of these jacks here, something I picked up at a yard sale for $10. And there is the back of the transfer case. We'll just simply stick that right about there to kind of catch this transfer case as it starts to drop down once we take off our cross member. Alright, so the first thing we want to do on the driver's side, there is a smog system right here that has 3 13 millimeter bolts. We got to get these bolts out, and then we can lift up on this system here, and there's a wire back here that we have to unplug on the back. We'll get that unhooked, and now we can kind of set this system down out of the way. And there is a look at that, kind of a big thing, couple hoses to it. And now we have access to all 2 of these bolts up on top. You can see there's the 2 holes. These are 18 millimeter bolts. I put a wrench on the back and break them loose. They come off pretty easy. And there are 2 on this side and 2 on the other side. And on the passenger side here are these 2. And you can see the 2 holes there. I've saved some time. I've gone ahead and taken these out with my tools. There are those 2. And now we'll take off these 4 bolts. This holds the cross member up on the frame. And you notice already we got a gap here, so we're go in the right direction. All right, back on the driver's side, we just about got this last 15 millimeter bolt out, and you notice how it's already disconnected. It's dropping down on its own. This is why we have a jack underneath on the back of the transfer case. It's already caught it, so this should come off fairly easy. So we got to do is go ahead and take this last one out. All right, so maybe we could just kind of watch it fall as I take this last bolt out. So far, this has not been too bad to take off. Nothing like the Ford Explorers where the bolts snap off in the frame. She's just about off. And there's the last bolt. And we'll see if we can just shake it. And surprisingly, came off fairly easy. So there it is. And now you can see just how much more room we have under here to start working on things. And it'll make our job just a little bit easier. And here is a look at the cross member. Pretty simple design. You got a bolt on this side for the transmission mount and one there. And also there's this side and there's those two bolts there. They're kind of long. You got to wiggle those out, and you got a couple there. So that's basically a look at that. All right, so the next thing we got to work on is get this secondary bracket here that bolts to the bottom of the transmission. It goes over here and it bolts on. Well, it doesn't really bolt. It just slides on the exhaust over here, and there is one bolt here I left stuck up in here. There's actually two of these. These are 15. These are two long ones that actually go up into this. One goes right here and one goes over there on the outside of that bracket. And now we wiggle this out of here like this. Now you may have to fight with yours because right there, they slide right down on that right there. And sometimes those will just have just barely enough room to come off on that right there. So there is a look at that. So let's get this out of here and we'll look at it real quick. And there it is. There's the two bolt holes that the bolts bolt up into. You got your secondary mounts there for your bolts and nuts. And over here is where they slide into those exhaust hangers. So just be aware of that. That can fight you just a little bit. So let's get this off to the side. Also, there's a brace that goes across here into the frame. One bolt over there, one here. I'll put the bolts back in here. And we'll just take that off just to get it out of the way because we are going to be taking the drive shaft off next. And there's a look at that bracket. And this thing, folks, look at that. It is bent. Someone must have hit something underneath of it and caught it. But there we go. So far, so good. And now we'll go ahead and get our drive shaft out. I've marked it with some paint here, so we're in good shape there. And we just have one bolt here to take out. We might as well just go ahead and take it out along with the cap and put it off into the pail. And that way we'll know where that's at. All right, let's go ahead and get this out. It should come out fairly easy, hopefully. And there we go. And make sure your vehicle's in park and the emergency brake is on and all that. And sometimes, well, don't get too excited. The caps sometimes will get stuck on there and you'll have to fight with them. All right, and there we go. So, but one of the caps stayed on there, and interesting enough, that is on there, but it's all rusted off. So I'm not sure what that is. At this point, we'll mostly just break it off and take this cap off, and we'll put this off to the side. And now we'll simply set this off to the side with the rest of the other parts. All right, as we continue here, we got the front drive shaft out, and it's fairly easy to take out. What you got to do is, if I get up under here, and you can see there's where it goes to the front of the transfer case. You've actually got to get something behind here and kind of pry like this. It'll kind of pop out of there. There's a little snap ring right here, I believe, that kind of catches it. And on the front, if you take out these bolts right there, these are 11 millimeter. I think I stuck them outside. Those where the caps are. Once you loosen those, take those off first and turn the drive shaft, just kind of shift it in neutral or something right here. And like I said, make sure your vehicle's blocked and everything before you do all this stuff, because you don't want this thing rolling anywhere. Once you shift this into neutral or just out of park, then you can turn this drive shaft and you can kind of snake it up through here, through this little hole, as you're kind of prying this out back here. And this is how it pops out like that. You may have to just take this smog hose here, move it out of the way. It was kind of hanging there from a earlier clip video that I did. But that's basically how I got that out. And if I shine the light here, you can see there's the front drive connector shaft. So that is out, so we'll put this off to the side. And there's a better look at the drive shafts. I did save my caps, and they seem to be okay. And here are the U-clamps that kind of hold that on there. So that is that, and there is the inside of that. So alright, so we'll put this off to the side. Now I know we just got done talking about that drive shaft, but I want to back up one step. When you take that drive shaft, go ahead and make sure your transfer case and transmission is up, you know, pretty level the way it would be before you take out your cross member, because I think it puts a little pressure on the front differential. I couldn't confirm that, but there's enough movement back here that probably doesn't do that. So at this point, what you can do is go ahead and let your jack all the way down. Now this will rest on the bottom frame of the engine there. It only can come down so far. And also, in front of the car, I went ahead and kind of tuck these two bolts out. There's one right here, and there's one over here that kind of holds the shroud in here. And this will let it move just a little bit because, and there are the bolts, you can see with this engine tipped all the way back, because we want to eventually get in here underneath the transmission, put a long extension, and break those bolts loose on the bell housing. This is why we want the engine kind of in an angle like this, and you can see this is pretty tight. It's hitting there, but it's still free. So you might want to check that when you lower it down. Just make sure, you know, this is not in a bind or anything. But anyway, this is about as far back as the engine is going to go, tip-wise. And as you can see right here, here is the back of the engine, the bottom of the oil pan, and here is the transmission. It's down as far as it's going to go. So I'm a little concerned about those top bolts, but I still think we can get to them once we get this transfer case out, put a long extension up in there and break them loose. But most of the bolts here are going to be pretty easy. So what we're going to do now at this point, go ahead and hook some wires, just kind of feel around, make sure we get everything unhooked on the transfer case back here, and then we're going to start unbolting these bolts that go around the transfer case, which are right about there. So we have two options. Well, actually the transfer case is bolted right here. This is an extension housing, so I think we're going to leave the extension housing on, because if we unhook that, unbolt that, take it off, we're going to have fluid everywhere. Well, we don't have any fluid in the transmission, so we don't have to worry about that. So I'm getting ahead of myself. So I think we'll go ahead and just bolt these here, bolts off, and slide this transfer case off. I'll get this off. It's going to be kind of close on that jack. I'm probably going to lower it down with the jack, and then go ahead and slide it off the jack and slide the transfer case out, because with this on the jacks, I don't know if it's going to come out or not, and I'm kind of worried now, wondering about this jack, if this is going to actually work for this transmission. Although we can get it down, if we can get the transmission down, we'll slide it off the jack and slide it out from underneath the car. But anyway, getting ahead of myself, let's go ahead and hook all the wires and go ahead and get this transfer case out of here best we can. Alright, so there are the 5 nuts. These are 15mm that hold that transfer case on, and you can see there is a little clip here that actually holds the fuel line, return line in place on the side. And you can see this was easier than I thought. I just kind of put the screwdriver right here, and this thing's ready to come off. There's a little bit of fluid there, but catching it in the pail, but the bolts are easy to get to. I just stuck my hand up there, and surprisingly they broke loose really easy. So now all we have to do is go ahead and put our transmission jack under here and kind of catch this. We'll pry this off and get this out of here. So I think I've got everything unhooked. That's what you want to make sure. There is a couple wires on the top you got to make sure you get unhooked. One's tucked over there, but just take your time, get up in there and make sure, feel around that you got everything. And at least when you slide it off and put it on the jack stand, lower it down slowly. That way you can kind of look up in there even better and make sure you don't snap any wires or anything else. So let's go ahead and see if we can get this out of here. Alright, so we got our jack stand under there. We're going to go ahead and pry it apart. We got some pressure on it. I got a cloth there to kind of keep it from sliding around, so wish me luck. Let's see if we can slide this out of here. All right, well that was a little fast. And I'll go ahead and use my ratchet here, impact, and turn this down. See how low we can get this. Probably not that low. But nevertheless, we got it out. So what I'm probably just going to have to do is just turn this and slide it off the jack, because there's no way I'm going to get this out of here. And luckily I did get all the wires unhooked, so I'm happy there. I didn't break anything, so except one of the clips on top earlier, I kind of broke the clip, so we'll just slide this off. It's not terribly heavy, but if you have a friend that can help you, man, I tell you what, get your friend, pay him a few dollars. It'll make all the difference in the world. And there is our transfer case. So, wow. Happy we got that off. All right, so there is that. You know, I can probably get the transmission out with this, but getting it back in, I'm going to have to set up a strap on this. The one I got, one of the springs are missing. But anyway, here is a look at the transfer case. Fairly easy. You know, I can carry it. It's not terribly heavy, but you got a plug here. You got a plug here that you can't see when you're laying under there. This one you can fairly see well laying on your back, but when you unhook all this, snake it out of here, unhook this and another one of these on the side of the frame, and just take the wiring harness and push it out of the way. But here's a look at that. And on the very top, you have one of these guys here. Just release the wiring harness. Now we'll have to get a gasket eventually later. Nothing wrong with the transfer case. It's just the transmission. Alright, so now let's go back under the car real quick. Alright, so here is the back of the transmission with the transfer case unhooked. Got all the wires kind of tucked off to the side. Some of these will bolt on the side of the transmission. There's a small bolt over there. Let's see. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it or not. But right about there, there's where the gear shifter plug is. There's a bolt right there. Hole I've already taken out. You unhook that and you can shove all these wires off to the side. Now, as for the transmission line, you see these two little guys. Yeah, I took a little pick, got my hand up in there, and I was able to get these off, believe it or not. I was totally shocked. So I'll show you how I did that. So like I said earlier, I don't have a lot of room, but right there, you can see those lines going inside the transmission. I was able to get my hand up in there far enough to slide those clips off, and you can actually see the lines are now pretty much disconnected. So I was really worried about that. If you look on the very, very top, if I shine the light up here, let's see, it's really tight. There are the bell housing bolts. I think I can get those with an extension from the back, and that should be good. So we're almost ready to get this transmission out, but we still got to get a few more bolts out on the bottom here. We got to get the torque converter bolts out, is what I'm trying to say. It's really tough to talk when you're upside down. Once we get those out, then we can go ahead and get this out of here. So it looks like for a one-man band like me, it's a job. But if you have two people helping you, it's so much easier. But you can see I got all the wires disconnected up here, all the hoses off the side. So hopefully it should be pretty easy to get out just by me. So go ahead and finish up here and do some more. Alright, well, I'm surprised how easy it is to get these torque converter bolts out. Here's the plug that allows you to get into those bolts. Put a socket in there. There I got two of them out. And that's just another plug that's there. Let's go under here and I'll just leave the camera rolling. There's the plug we took out and get situated here. And you can see where my 15 socket is right there. And there's a better look at it. And there is the nut that I'm taking out. Real easy to do. I just take a screwdriver and just kind of stick up in here like this on these teeth. And you can just kind of turn this flywheel. But I'll tell you what, when they put these torque converter bolts in here, they weren't fooling around. These, I'm using a 15. You can also use probably a Allen socket on them too, because they have a place in the center for that. And once I get this one here out, this is it. All the torque converter bolts are out. And really all I got to do is take out the bell housing bolts, and this transmission is ready to come out. But I'm going to do that tomorrow. I'm going to rest up tonight, come back out here tomorrow. And that's one way you can just kind of break this job up over a day or so, or a few hours, rest in between. and you'd be surprised just how easy it is. So let's go ahead and get this one out. All right, so this is about ready to come out, and I'll just take a screwdriver and kind of catch the bolt here, kind of help it out like this, and there it is. So hopefully you can still see that in shot. But anyway, that's you can see the bolt. The other two came out real easy. Come on out, you can come out. So make a liar out of me, of course. Come on. Oh, come on. There. Anyway, there it is. So it is out. All right, so the last torque converter bolt is out. I didn't bother marking them because I'm putting another torque converter in this. So no point. But if you're going to reuse your torque converter, you might want to paint your bolts and your spot on your flywheel so you kind of know where it goes. But really, I'm pretty excited. All we got to do is take out the bow housing bolts tomorrow. Drop this bad boy out. So we'll see you back here tomorrow. All right, everyone, we're getting ready to pull this out of here. What we're going to do today, it's a new day, by the way. I'm rested up. These are all 15mm bolts all the way around. I've already gone ahead and taken one out on the bottom here, see how easy it was going to come out. And it came out really easy, but first, before we start taking bolts out, there's something you should do. Is right here, go ahead and get a piece of wood or something and just kind of rest it up at the bottom of the oil pan there, because what we're going to do when we unhook that transmission, we don't want the engine to pivot back. This is just to kind of keep it balanced a little bit. And I've got it on the oil drain plug. Now you could put a piece of wood in behind there and you know, fix it a little bit better if you're afraid of cracking your oil pan, but I think this will be just fine. We're not putting any weight on it. We're just going to keep it where it is. So that's one thing you can do. I tried to put something under the flywheel here on the frame, but there's no room. But I think it works better back here. And it's just kind of snug there to kind of keep it from pivoting back. That's all it is. So in order to get these bolts out of the top there, you can see with the transmission kind of sitting down a little bit, leaning back. I've got this extension here all the way up in there, and I've already got one of the bolts out. And you can see how easy this is to get up in there. And the other bolt is actually on the other side over there. And this is basically how I'm getting them out. And there's plenty of room here. If your vehicle's up a little higher on a lift, it's really no problem. And basically, just put a ratchet on and break them loose. This is how we're going to get all of them out. We're going to take off all of them on the top. We're going to leave a couple on the sides, and that way we'll set up our jack under the transmission and basically you know, lower it down. All I want to do right now is just get the transmission out. It doesn't have to be perfect on the jack. The jack should allow me enough room to get it down, and you can see bolts are pretty easy. So just use your extension all the way around and do what you can. And I'm probably going to leave this bolt in and the one probably right here for now. That way when I get the jack under here, I can be on this side and easily take them out and put a pry bar in here and wiggle this transmission and get it out. So let me go ahead and get the rest of these out real quick. So there's the 15mm socket, and this is a 1/2 inch extension, and you can see just how long it is. It's about 34 inches long, so these things are fairly cheap. You don't want to use a 1/4 inch because it'll flex and probably break, but this here worked perfectly if you just take your time and break those bolts loose accordingly. All right, before we get too far, taking too many bolts out, we gotta go ahead and get our dipstick out here before I forget. And it's still a little 10mm bolt. Yeah, so this should, hopefully it'll come right up. Be nice. Sometimes they fight you. Set the stuff out of the way here. See if we can get this out of here. There we go. A lot of guys forget about this. They end up breaking it, so. There it is. All right, so looks pretty good there. Seal's in good shape. So, all right, so that's out. All right, so all of our bolts are out on the top. You can see the holes up there. There's 3 on this side over here, and you kind of got to snake your ratchet and your extension on this side, but you can get to them and stick your hands up there and just pull the rest of the way out. The only ones I got left right now is right here, and one on the bottom where I can get to it on this side. And now we're ready to go ahead and put this transmission jack under here, and everything is pretty much back out of the way. And on the side of this transmission, you have these clips. You can just push this line out of those clips, and it'll free it up. And now we're ready to go ahead and put the jack under here, separate this, and go ahead and drop it out. So are you excited? I'm excited. This wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be for just one guy. But putting it in, well, that might be a different story. I am going to get a heavier jack. I've been searching Facebook Marketplace, and I found a really nice transmission jack I can buy that'll do the job. The one I originally had, well, I loaned it out a couple times, got it back, and the fourth time I loaned it out, it's not coming back. So my $200 transmission jack that I used to have for these jobs to put these transmissions in, well, it's gone forever. So I will have to buy a heavier duty transmission jack. But the one I got for now will get the job done, at least getting this out. So let's go ahead and get these bolts out and get the transmission jack under here and get this out. All right, guys, so I got the camera set up where you can kind of watch me there. I got the jack under there. And I got my pry bar, and all I got to do is zip these last two bolts out and separate this. All 10. I'm not going to take that one all the way out. I want to see if I can separate this. Now it's got some dowel pins I'll probably have to fight with. Might as well go ahead and take the last bolt out, see if my jack is just about where I want it. And now, see if we can start it out. Oh, came right out. Wow. I think we got to lower it a little bit now. Oops. Probably not that fast. All right, so let's go ahead and get the top of it loose. There's that one. And it's probably a dowel pin on this side, hung up on it. It's hung up a little bit. Yep. Yeah, it's got a dowel pin up on the top, so I gotta just kind of play around with it here a little bit. And let's see. Maybe I can lower the back of it down just a little, not too much. Get it kind of going a little bit better. Yep, it's just about out. Alright, so there we go. We got her. Oh my goodness. I'm going to push this back a little bit. And it should be fairly balanced. That torque converter is really heavy, so let's go ahead and lower it just a tiny bit and not put my hands under the jack. There we go, my friends. That's how you get your transmission out of a Trailblazer. And there we go. How about that? So I'll probably just slide it off the jack and slide it out. So hey, if you like this video right now, give it a thumbs up. Alright guys, so after getting the transmission out, you're probably wondering, well, how'd the front do? Well, check this out. It actually didn't do much of anything. The transmission was heavy enough, I guess, and the engine is tilted enough to actually leave it pretty much where it is. So it looks like we're going to be okay putting it back in. I was worried about clearance issues, but it looks like we're going to be okay. So for now, we just get rid of that thing. Alright, so we got our transmission out, and there is a look at the torque converter and all 10 bolts. Let's go look at the transmission. And there's a look at it. I am proof one guy can get this out if he takes his time and has the right tools and a jack and just kind of takes your time at it. Now here are all the bolts around the bell housing. They are 10. Now there's one over here by the exhaust where the catalytic converter is, or catalytic converter is. That's a little tough to get into. Sometimes people forget this one, and they also forget this, but you got two big dowel pins, one here, and sometimes I like to get hung up. You do not have to worry about the starter. It bolts to the block. And this transmission, well, my symptoms were it never had overdrive. It shifted all the way through 4th gear, but now it's to a point it only has 2nd and 3rd gear. It never goes into 4th gear. So something internally has gone wrong. And by looking at the turbine shaft here, look at that. So I got to see what my options are going to be, either an overhaul or maybe just put another transmission in it, buy a used one. But I think we're probably going to overhaul this and just put another torque converter on it. And here's a look at the back of it. And there's the other bolt. Actually, there's 11 bolts if you count this one on the bottom. So some have 10, some have 11. And there is a look at the plug and the back of it and the side here. Everything was pretty easy to get off, unhook, and didn't really break anything except one little plug. I kind of snapped the top of it off, but I got another plug for it. And that's it. So this is a 2006 4.2 Trailblazer. So just to verify, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and this one makes 11 bolts that you'll have to take out in that bell housing to get that transmission out. And quickly, let me just show you what it looks like under here with this transmission out. You got this little bracket up here. The transmission will fall out when you put your transmission back in. You may have to kind of pull this out a little bit. This is just a cooling hose. There's the starter right there. Like I said, you don't have to take that off. And everything else is pretty straightforward. There's one of the dowel pins there and one over there. And so far, looks like we are going to be calling this a successful pull. Now, as for my jack, when I bought this on Facebook Marketplace, I realized, well, this side has a spring and a little catcher, but this side does not. It's missing. See, it goes right here, so I'm going to have to see if I can get another one. If I can find me another one off of another ratchet, then this will be good. We can put this on there. I got kind of lazy. I just wanted to get this transmission out so I can take a few days and look for my options here and figure out what I want to do. And I eventually will keep this and just use a wooden platform on it, bolt something on the top of it, where it's a little more stable. And also you do have these adjustment nuts here, so this thing does pivot a little bit, but does not pivot left and right. My old jack, well, it pivoted left and right and front and forward, so maybe we'll be buying a new one just to have it for backup and for heavier duty jobs. Alright guys, so there you go. There's how you take out a transmission out of a 2006 Chevy Trailblazer. If you like this video and it helps you out, give me a thumbs up. And until my next video guys, I will see you later.